But what happened with the band breakup?
I maybe know a little bit more now after, was it 50 years or something? I know that internally, within me, I felt like everything was going great.
Creedence Clearwater Revival blasted through the late 1960s with chart-topping hits that became anthems for a generation. Yet behind the music's unmistakable sound was a fractured band torn apart by creative control, bitter conflicts, and lawsuits that would shadow their legacy for decades. How did a group with full arenas and timeless songs unravel so completely? John Fogerty, the driving force and voice behind CCR, faced battles far from the stage, from military service that shaped his songs to personal and legal struggles that haunted his career long after the band's breakup. Body rise to fame and early tensions. Creedence Clearwater Revival exploded onto the music scene in the late 1960s with a string of unforgettable hits that seemed effortless and raw. Led by John Fogerty's distinctive voice and songwriting, the band swiftly climbed to the top, becoming one of the most popular rock acts in America. Their success was fueled by tight, swampy grooves and lyrics that resonated with a generation grappling with war, social unrest, and change. But beneath this rapid ascent lay tensions that could no longer be ignored. From the outset, John Fogerty held an iron grip on the band's creative direction. While the other members, Tom Fogerty, Stu Cook, and Doug Clifford, joined forces from their early days as the Blue Velvets, John worked independently when it came to writing and recording the music. This created an imbalance in the group's dynamics. He rarely shared control, often producing and arranging tracks alone, which caused frustration among the others eager for a bigger creative role. The success of singles like Susie Q and the iconic Proud Mary brought attention, but also pressure. The other band members felt sidelined, their voices barely heard outside of live performances, while John's maniacal work ethic drove everything forward. Tom, the oldest Fogerty brother, reportedly bristled under John's tight direction, and frequent clashes over control began to erupt. Though the band was winning commercially, cracks were forming beneath the surface. John himself acknowledged his maniacal control and later described his leadership style as autocratic, believing it was necessary to keep the band from sinking. His fear was that loosening the reins would diminish their success and financial stability. Yet this uncompromising stance came at a high cost to relationships, with communication dwindling and bandmates feeling alienated. Members were left out of key decisions and business matters, which only amplified resentment. As CCR's star rose, the pressure on John increased as well. Balancing the role of visionary lyricist and frontman with the demands of constant touring and recording took a toll. Meanwhile, the desire for creative input from Cook, Clifford, and especially Tom intensified as they had grown with the band and wanted more than just a supporting role. These underlying tensions set the stage for conflicts that would soon erupt publicly. Promises made early in the band's career gave way to broken expectations. The initial charm of being part of a successful rock group began to fade as personal ambitions clashed. John's uncompromising attitude pushed others away, even as fans applauded their music from the audience. These unspoken struggles continued quietly for a time, masked by the band's hit records and sold-out shows. The pressure ultimately boiled over during sessions for their classic songs, when the three other band members pressed for a larger say in songwriting and production, a change John was reluctant to accept. The delicate balance of control tipped towards crisis, threatening the harmony that had built their fame. The band, at peak popularity, was already a ticking time bomb. Despite the internal conflicts, Creedence Clearwater Revival managed to storm the charts and become one of the 1960s most successful rock groups. However, beneath the surface, the seeds of bitterness and rivalry were sprouting, destined to complicate their legacy. Their story was no longer just about music, but about a clash of egos and control. What followed was a series of events that would fracture the band irreparably and alter John Fogerty's life forever. John Fogerty's personal experience in the military during a deeply divisive war era added profound layers to his music and perspective. Fogerty's military service and influence. John Fogerty's journey to rock stardom was shaped in part by his service during the Vietnam War era, a time of turmoil both abroad and at home. Aware that his draft number was approaching, Fogerty wisely enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserves, which allowed him to serve only a brief active duty period. His time at bases such as Fort Bragg in North Carolina and Fort Knox was pivotal. It placed him among soldiers who themselves were often conflicted about the war they were sent to fight. Despite the military's disciplined environment, Fogerty observed that even soldiers found little enthusiasm for the conflict in Vietnam. He later reflected that the unpopular war was widely scrutinized within the ranks, with few wanting to fight in a jungle war they did not believe in. This environment left a deep impression on him, fueling both his skepticism and artistic expression in the years to come. Fogerty's first-hand experience with military life enriched the raw emotional power of his songwriting. Many of his most iconic anti-war tunes, including the famous Fortunate Son, were born from this viewpoint. The song voiced the frustration of those unable to avoid the draft, contrasting sharply with privileged elites who escaped service. Its lyrics became an emblem of protest and resistance, echoing the sentiments of countless young Americans during that era. His military service was brief, yet impactful, inspiring a perspective that defined much of CCR's sound and message. The urgency and authenticity in Fogerty's lyrics struck a chord that went beyond simple rock and roll. It was social commentary grounded in lived experience. His ability to capture the mood of the nation helped elevate Creedence Clearwater Revival to cultural icons. The military service of both Fogerty and Doug Clifford started in the 1960s and continued until their military service ended. The band returned to their musical work because their recent personal events brought them stronger creative power, which they used to compose new music. The historical period of their time shaped their musical style through its social impact, which made their songs sound urgent and relevant. CCR achieved their first major public appearance through their 1969 Woodstock concert after military service had ended for the band members. The Vietnam War continued to unfold during that time period, while Creedence's music functioned as both a protest anthem and a musical backdrop to the ongoing demonstrations. The band expressed their generation's feelings through their music, which showed both rage and uncertainty. The band achieved cultural value through Fogerty's military view, which added authentic military value. The anti-war movement that their music represented formed through his real-life experiences. His artistic expression developed through his military service, which he used to establish his creative identity and purpose. The band achieved their first breakout success during this time period, which defined them as one of the major musical forces of the late 1960s through their combination of swamp rock and social activism. The audience from urban centers and smaller communities found this combination appealing, which Fogerty developed based on his military experiences. Their songs served as anthems that people used to demonstrate their resistance and to think deeply about themselves. Creedence Clearwater Revival's internal struggles and external pressures began to collide under the weight of fame and musical expectations. Woodstock and peak success Creedence Clearwater Revival arrived at Woodstock in the summer of 1969 as one of the premier rock acts following the release of their critically acclaimed album, Green River. The band was riding a wave of momentum, with John Fogerty confident that they had become the next thing, just below legendary groups like the Beatles. Their reputation as a powerhouse live act had been cemented by relentless touring and radio success. Yet, their performance at Woodstock became a source of frustration for Fogerty. Technical issues and weather delays pushed their set past midnight, when many in the crowd were exhausted and disengaged. He later described the audience as all intertwined and asleep, covered with mud, a far cry from the energy and excitement promised for prime time. The reality of playing after the Grateful Dead, whose delayed and curtailed set disrupted the schedule, compounded the band's disappointment. This experience colored Fogerty's memory of the festival enough that he refused to allow the band's Woodstock performance to be included in the subsequent documentary and live albums. The setback was more than just about sound problems. It represented a missed opportunity at the most iconic music event of the decade. Fogerty's exacting nature and high standards left him dissatisfied at a moment when the world was watching. The band maintained their rapid ascent by dominating summer music festivals, while their songs reached #1 positions throughout the time period from 1969 to 1971. The song Bad Moon Rising and Proud Mary became essential tracks for rock radio stations because they combined blues and country and swamp rock musical elements, which distinguished them from their time period. CCR achieved an explosive success that reached a level which few others in the music industry could match. The band members faced increasing challenges because they had to work continuously at their current speed, while they struggled to keep their existing status. John's insistence on controlling both songwriting and production work led to increased distance between him and his fellow band members. The combination that produced successful songs created increasing bitterness among the team members, which resulted in a delicate situation that existed under the loud audience reaction. The band attained public acclaim but experienced private distress, which created a clear contrast. The audience witnessed a complete musical experience from the band, but internal distrust and conflicts between members remained hidden. The artistic differences between the team members and their personal conflicts created tension, which revealed faults in their relationship that fame could not conceal perpetually. Woodstock represented the peak of their professional journey, which later developed into challenges that put their friendship to the test. The event showed how their exceptional status as famous people who achieved success throughout history, faced difficulties during their performance in front of 500,000 people, which proved that achievements have fragile boundaries. The cultural impact of CCR music established their increasing influence, but the actual band dynamic structure would create serious internal problems. John Fogerty's musical ideas helped advance the band, but they also created conflicts among the members. The band members would soon encounter a situation which would create a pivotal moment in their history. The breakneck rise from Woodstock success into mounting personal and creative conflicts would define the next phase in Creedence Clearwater Revival's dramatic history: band fracture and Tom's departure. By the early 1970s, the tensions within Creedence Clearwater Revival had reached a breaking point. John Fogerty's ironclad control over creative decisions and recording sessions created an atmosphere fraught with resentment. While the band soared to the top of the charts, the other members, Tom Fogerty, Stu Cook, and Doug Clifford, felt increasingly marginalized. They yearned for a greater say in the songwriting and vocal responsibilities that John guarded jealously. Tom Fogerty, John's older brother and rhythm guitarist, was especially vocal about his frustration. Despite being one of the founding members, Tom's creative contributions were largely overshadowed. The constant clashes between the brothers spilled into nearly every aspect of their relationship, straining both their family bond and their professional unity. Numerous times, Tom threatened to leave the band, feeling trapped under John's dominating leadership. The pressure of fame only intensified the personal struggles. John was juggling domestic troubles, including a failing marriage, alongside the demands of running America's hottest rock band. Band meetings grew tense, with John reluctantly conceding to the others' demands for more input. But any relief was brief. The unresolved conflicts only fueled deeper bitterness and suspicion among the group. On the eve of recording their 7th album, emotions boiled over. The other 3 members formally demanded more creative control, challenging the status quo that John had maintained for years. For John, yielding to these demands felt like relinquishing power he had fought hard to secure. The meeting was intended to ease tensions, but instead fractured the fragile peace. The band suffered a major setback in their peak success period when Tom Fogerty departed from Creedence Clearwater Revival in February 1971. The remaining members of the band became a trio after Tom left, which created a strong reaction among their fans. Drummer Doug Clifford later recounted how Tom had endured much of John's controlling behavior but decided he needed to forge his own path to grow as an artist. Tom claimed there was no bad blood between them, but the two parties had developed clear fractures in their relationship. After Tom left the band, Doug Clifford and Stu Cook gained increased power within their musical operations, while John maintained his control over the group dynamics. The power shift did not heal the wounds between the parties, but instead created a deeper schism that continued to grow. The group, though smaller, experienced an essential creative and emotional transformation that created lasting changes. Creedence Clearwater Revival continued its music career despite experiencing internal conflicts because the band members wanted to maintain their record label success. The band returned to the studio, although their initial musical energy, which had brought them success, appeared to have diminished. The band had developed their signature sound through instinctive methods, but their musical direction now faced internal conflicts. The band's story, which began as a narrative about youthful aspiration and artistic partnerships, had evolved into a warning story about how power struggles and personal pride lead to negative results. Musicians continued to perform their music throughout the show, while hidden tensions created a danger that could destroy their achievement. The upcoming results from these fractures would create a situation which people could not overlook. The band planned their next album to serve as both a fresh start and their final project, while implementing a musical transformation that would shock listeners and critics who would express their displeasure. The decisions made during this period not only fractured the band, but also set the stage for their final album, the Mardi Gras album Fallout. In 1972, Creedence Clearwater Revival released Mardi Gras, an album that would prove to be both their last and their most controversial. Unlike previous efforts, primarily driven by John Fogerty's songwriting and vocals, this album saw the remaining members, Stu Cook and Doug Clifford, take on increased creative roles. Each bandmate contributed their own songs and shared lead vocals, a radical departure from CCR's familiar formula. This new arrangement was born more from necessity than harmony. John Fogerty, known for his perfectionism, wrote only 3 songs for the album and chose to sing a cover, Hello, Mary Lou. This scaling back represented a significant shift in the group's internal dynamics and exposed the band's underlying fractures. Critics and fans alike reacted negatively, seeing the album as disjointed and lacking the coherent energy that had propelled CCR to stardom. Mardi Gras peaked at number 12 on the Billboard album charts, a notable drop from the band's previous consistent top 10 hits. While the album did feature the John-written single Sweet Hitchhiker, which received some airplay, it was overshadowed by the album's uneven quality and the palpable tensions behind the scenes. The creative experiment failed to resonate broadly, signaling that the band's magic might have run its course. Behind the scenes, the album was a literal manifestation of the band's deteriorating relationships. John later admitted that allowing his bandmates to share the spotlight was partly to prove how much better he was as the primary songwriter. This admission reveals the deep animosity and competition beneath the surface, fueling a toxic atmosphere that made collaboration impossible. Songs like Stu Cook's Take It Like a Friend and John's Looking for a Reason hinted at the personal grievances and frustration plaguing the group. The lyrics inadvertently chronicled a band in crisis, trapped in conflicts over control and recognition. These tracks weren't just creative expressions, they were emotional declarations of a band's unraveling. The critical panning of Mardi Gras was harsh. Influential voices such as John Landau called it one of the worst albums ever released by a major rock group. Such strong condemnation from the music press underscored the album's failure and often overshadowed any goodwill from the band's loyal fan base. The review climate amplified doubts about CCR's future. Within months of the album's release, Creedence Clearwater Revival dissolved. The experiment that had been Mardi Gras turned out to be the final straw. The band's internal chaos spilled over into the public realm, leaving both the members and their fans to confront the end of an era. Even with their final album closing an important chapter, the story between John Fogerty and CCR was far from over. Legal battles over CCR's music. The breakup of Creedence Clearwater Revival did not mark the end of turmoil for John Fogerty. Instead, it triggered a decades-long legal saga that would consume much of his career and spirit. Central to these battles was the contract John had signed with Fantasy Records early in his career, a deal that gave the label exclusive publishing rights to his songs. This arrangement put Fogerty in a vulnerable position, limiting his control and earnings despite his status as the creative force behind CCR. John's relationship with Fantasy's head, Saul Zaentz, quickly deteriorated into bitter hostility. Zaentz refused to release John from his contract when the band broke up, even though other members were freed. This refusal effectively trapped Fogerty, forcing him into years of legal wrangling and stifling his ability to move forward artistically. The animosity between the two men would fuel multiple lawsuits and public disputes. For years, John boycotted performing CCR songs live, frustrated by the harsh terms of the deal and feelings of betrayal. The complicated ownership of his own music became a recurring theme in his life and career. It was not until Fantasy changed hands that Fogerty found some relief. When the label's founder sold his interest, John was able to renegotiate and reclaim more control. In 2007, he finally released Revival, the album that marked his return to performing his classic work. Yet, legal conflicts continued even after these breakthroughs. John found himself in court battling former bandmates Stu Cook and Doug Clifford, as well as elements connected to Fantasy. Disputes over trademark rights, use of the band's name, and performance royalties extended well into the 1990s and 2000s. Despite his desire to put the past behind him, the scars and lawsuits lingered, deepening divisions with former bandmates. One particularly surreal chapter involved allegations that a song John wrote, "The Old Man Down the Road," plagiarized his own earlier Creedence hit, "Run Through the Jungle." The lawsuit against Fogerty, viewed by many as Kafkaesque, was prompted by Zaentz with alleged encouragement from Clifford. Fogerty saw this as the ultimate betrayal, a fight over his creative identity that only compounded old grievances. His lawyers were left to challenge the absurd claim that he had copied himself. The lengthy court battles created a negative impact on Fogerty's professional life because it damaged his relationships and made it harder for people to understand him. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which should have been a happy occasion, turned into a legal battle because of existing conflicts between the two parties. Fogerty's decision to avoid performing with his former bandmates at the award show demonstrated the intensity of his enduring emotional pain. The ongoing fights about musical rights and royalty payments show how complicated the music industry operates while revealing the actual impact on artists who created famous songs. John Fogerty battled for his musical rights because he needed to preserve his artistic identity, which depended on his original work. The ongoing fights between the two parties created an environment where professional work and personal grudges became indistinguishable, which made it impossible for them to settle their disputes. Fogerty demonstrates his strength through his music and active participation in the music business, which continues despite his ongoing legal battles. His legacy control battle demonstrates his intense need to achieve creative freedom while pursuing justice. The creative partnerships faced a major setback because the conflicts revealed how deeply artists disagreed about financial matters and their share of credit. The legal disputes, which John Fogerty fought, remained an essential part of his life story because they linked his musical work to his fight for artistic freedom and proper acknowledgement. The personal consequences of contract disputes and courtroom battles would continue to affect him throughout his life. Even more personal wounds lay wait in the fractured family ties, where the rift between John and his brother Tom turned tragedy into heartbreak. Family struggles and brother rivalry. John and Tom Fogerty's relationship was as complex and troubled as the band they shared. Though brothers by birth and bandmates by choice, their personal rivalry grew alongside the pressures of fame and creative control. Tom's departure from Creedence Clearwater Revival wasn't just a professional break, it marked a deep familial fracture that would never fully heal. Attempts at reconciliation were made, often driven by the desire to honor their aging mother and mend old wounds. According to John, the brothers agreed to write down their grievances to better understand each other and work through their differences. However, these efforts unraveled quickly, clouded by accusations and misunderstandings. John accused Tom of suing him, something Tom denied, leading to another painful split. Tom's legal action against John, filed in 1988 and dropped in early 1990s, underscored the bitter animosity between them. Their bond, once a source of strength, had dissolved into a rivalry fueled by years of resentment. The public disputes reflected a private struggle that left little room for forgiveness or peace during their lifetimes. The tragedy deepened in the 1980s when Tom contracted HIV from a tainted blood transfusion received during back surgery. The illness cast a shadow over the family, but reports suggest the brothers never reconciled before Tom's untimely death. John later expressed regret over their fallout, acknowledging the unresolved pain that lingered long after Tom was gone. John spoke about the necessity of forgiving his brother, admitting to himself that it was something he had to do because they never had the chance to make amends in person. This admission reveals the profound sense of loss, not only of a brother, but of closure and healing. For John, forgiveness became a personal closure, even if the wounds remained. The fractured relationship between the Fogerty brothers mirrored the broader story of Creedence Clearwater Revival, a band torn by conflict, control, and ambition. Their story highlights how familial bonds can both inspire and complicate creative collaboration. Behind the music lay a deep, unresolved emotional narrative. These personal struggles contributed to the bitterness witnessed at public moments like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. While fans hoped for a heartfelt reunion, tensions between John, Stu Cook, and Doug Clifford prevented any full reconciliation. John's refusal to share the stage with his former bandmates was a testament to the lasting wounds from their shared history. Though the music of Creedence Clearwater Revival endures, the personal dramas behind the scenes remain an inseparable part of their legacy. Legacy and lingering bitterness. The legacy of Creedence Clearwater Revival is a complex tapestry woven with timeless music and enduring bitterness. Their catalog of classic rock anthems remains influential, often featured on radio stations, movie soundtracks, and tribute albums. Songs like Proud Mary, Bad Moon Rising, and Fortunate Son continue to resonate, encapsulating the spirit of a turbulent era. Yet, beneath the enduring sound lies a story of fractured relationships and unresolved anger. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 1993 brought these tensions into sharp focus. While the event was the only major reunion of CCR's surviving members, it was far from harmonious. John Fogerty declined to share the stage with Stu Cook and Doug Clifford, opting instead to perform with other musicians. His decision spoke volumes about the ongoing bitterness, especially over lawsuits and disagreements related to the band's music rights. Cook and Clifford's involvement in legal actions against Fogerty deepened the feud. These disputes revolved around trademark infringements and the use of the Creedence name during later performances, contributing to a public rift that showed no signs of healing. Even decades after their heyday, the former bandmates remained locked in conflict, while their fans hoped for reconciliation. The absence of Tom Fogerty during later reunions was another painful reminder of the band's fractured history. His untimely death and estrangement from John left a void that could never be filled. Without him, a genuine, full reunion of Creedence Clearwater Revival seemed impossible. This absence underscored how personal wounds often transcend fame and success. The music of Creedence Clearwater Revival maintains its strength and attractiveness to audiences despite experiencing fractures throughout its history. Their brief, authentic musical style created a fundamental impact that reached musicians from various music styles including rock, blues, and country. The band established a benchmark for genuine American rock music through their ability to produce authentic, unrefined musical performances which still exist in contemporary music. Musicians and fans continue to experience the impact of their work throughout multiple generations. The internal disagreements of the band members operate as an educational demonstration, showing how artistic authority and personal pride and legal disputes damage artistic work. The CCR story demonstrates how extreme public recognition creates hidden difficulties that affect personal connections and professional relationships. That human connection between the Fogertys and their bandmates shows the personal struggles of musicians who appear to be safely detached from the world. John Fogerty experiences a combination of happiness and sadness regarding his musical heritage. John Fogerty protects his creative rights through his legal disputes with his former bandmates while fighting his emotional damage from prior experiences. Artists encounter a common struggle between their need to maintain personal values and their drive to achieve fame, according to his life story. The band members maintained their separate musical careers, yet their shared musical creations continued to unify them. Their music creates a powerful experience that enables listeners to experience both the historical period of transformations and conflicts and the positive developments and rebellious spirit of that time. The songbook of Creedence Clearwater Revival connects to their musical history, which maintains equal power to their 1968 songs. Creedence Clearwater Revival established its artistic legacy through musical achievements and personal losses, which produced both an American national anthem and a complex understanding of artistic brilliance. Their music maintains its relevance today because their broken relationships demonstrate to others that success does not create harmony. Outro: John Fogerty and Creedence Clearwater Revival gave the world unforgettable music, but behind the hits were stories of conflict, loss, and resilience. Their journey is a powerful reminder that artistry is often entwined with personal struggle. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives behind the music.